welcome to the Workbench and welcome to another episode of Wheels Wings TV. Today we have the all-new 1/72nd scale Sherman Firefly from Airfix. Let's have a look. Okay, first sprue. So we've got upper and lower halves of the turret, our 17-pounder gun barrel molded in one piece with muzzle brake in two halves, although it would have been nice to see them with the openings molded hollow, but they are round, so that's nothing we can't take care of with a drill bit. Commander's cupola, and of course we have our easy assembly wheels and tracks, all molded into one piece. Of course we're forsaking a little bit of accuracy here because the guide teeth are of course go all the way across, and we don't have any chevron treads on the face of the tracks. But that's definitely going to save you some build time. So if this is your first go at this, that'd probably be the way you'd want the route you'd want to go. Other than that, not too bad. Not a little bit. Mold seams are not excessive. Detail on the turret, reasonably sharp. Of course, we have the extra hatch that was added in for the loader, because he could not get past the breech of the 17-pounder in the event of an emergency, so they had to cut a new hatch for him. And the rear plate, fire extinguishers, lifting eyes, even the nicely done little British style antenna mount. The hull machine gun looks really good for the scale, although we won't be using that because the Firefly did not have the bow machine gun fitted. Yeah, looks pretty good. And we've got some track bits, some wheels, some ammunition boxes, jerry can, shovel. So I assume this is all just, I would assume these are all just stowage bits, which is nice to see because it's not as easy to get stowage pieces in 72 scale as it is in 35th, so nice to see all those little additions. Some ejector pins on the tracks there, but if depending on how those are going to be mounted, might have to fill those. And of course, mold lines on the wheels take care of those. But yeah, nice detail on the on those ammo boxes. Those look really good. We get our upper hull, bottom and sides, rear of the hull, and of course the transmission cover. Hull details are quite sharp. Could maybe use a few more little clasp details, but not too bad. Hatches look pretty good. Ventilators are nicely done. Some big holes here. I assume the lifting eyes probably installed from the inside in that case. Final drive covers. A little bit of bolt detail, and there's transmission cover. This is the three-piece bolted transmission cover, not the one-piece cast one. So technically these flanges should have a whole bunch of bolts on them. I suppose if they're going for simplicity, I can forgive that. It would have been nice to maybe seen those flanges molded separately and you just slot them in and they have all the bolt detail on it. These big exhaust grill on the rear of the hull. That'll take a wash nicely. Nice detail in the engine access doors. Yeah, that's not too bad at all. Convenient front of the tank that way, gun goes that way, marking on the bottom there so you don't get turned around. Some nice big locating lugs so you can get the sides and the rear and everything in position. Yeah, not too bad. And we got our grown-up tracks and suspension. So if you want to go for a little bit more detail, you pick these over the pre-assembled ones. Wheel detail seems a little soft, not too bad. At least one type of the Sherman wheels were just were a cast spoked wheel, so they weren't super sharp, so not too bad. The actual bogies look well done. There's gonna be lots of seam lines and mold lines to take care of between the two halves. You won't see a lot of it once the tracks go on, but on each end you definitely want to take care of those. Looks like, yeah, end connectors are molded onto the idler wheel and the drive sprockets, which I guess means, yeah, so you just got the center section of track that glues in. That's kind of a different way of going about it. Rather than do some individual links that go around, they just, yeah, that's unique. Of course, the top and bottom runs of track. Some ejector pins on the inside, but nothing to really worry yourselves about. Of course, we got the metal chevron with the 3 rivet, which is kind of typical to the Firefly. Seems a little, seems like they should be a lot more pronounced. Seems very light, not raised very much. I mean, these aren't as pronounced as the rubber block chevron tracks, but they should still, I would still think they'd be raised up a little bit more just to give a bit more definition. But yeah, not too bad. Looks like there might be a little bit of stress on these on the sprues. So careful you don't break those. You don't want your one-piece runs turning into multi-piece. Kind of defeats the purpose. But yeah, not too bad. Definitely be some seams and lines to take care of, but shouldn't be too bad. Cool. And Decals, Airfix, so printed by Cartograph, so shouldn't be any drama. 2 vehicles of the Staffordshire and the Northamptonshire Yeomanry. I believe it was, don't quote me, I think it was the Northamptonshire Yeomanry, or at least one squadron in that unit that I think typically gets the credit for taking out SS Tank Ace Michael Whitman. But I'd have to double check that. But, yeah, typical armor kit, not a lot of decals. Those that there are should behave themselves nicely. And our instructions. Usual historical blurb, safety blurb, and the important bits. So right off the bat, if you're using the pre-assembled tracks, go through steps 1 to 4, skip 5 through 32, and then 33 to 55. But if you want a little bit more refined look, you don't get to skip anything except step 4. So first thing, getting our lower hull all put together. With our handy little front of tank gun this way symbol. Nice big tabs for location. We got the exhaust deflector. Nicely showing two views of that so we know exactly where it goes. Final drive covers. And of course step 4, so if you're taking the easy way, you just slap your landing gear, I almost said landing gear, running gear onto the tank, although you, for the sake of painting, you may want to leave those off and attach them at the end. But if we're taking the hard road, getting our various bogies assembled. Of course, the wheels are molded on, so this could be a lot worse. Then attach our bogies to the hull. And our lower end of tracks locate on those 2 pins. Drive sprockets with the kind of interesting engineering with the end connectors molded to the wheel, and then you're just having the track pads, for lack of a better term. Short length from the sprocket to the lower run. Top run of tracks, idler wheel. The tracks done similar to the drive sprocket with the end connectors in the center section. Another short chunk, and one side is all done. Wash, rinse, and repeat for the other side, and your tracks are done. You probably want to try and see if you can just temporarily fix the bogies on, because I always like turning wheels and tracks into one chunk of assembly. Painting them separately just makes painting and weathering on the hull that much easier. So that shouldn't be too painful. Our upper hull, we got to open up some, the option to open up some various holes for bits of stowage, I would assume. And more holes in the back plate. Got our lifting eyes, which go in from the inside and hopefully fill in those big holes well. I believe those are fire extinguishers, front lifting eyes, headlights. Got our travel lock, shovel, rear stowage bin. Now this part here, B-17, that is the hull machine gun. That is all kinds of wrong for a Firefly. The 17-pounder shells were a lot bigger than your standard 75 shells, so they got rid of the co-driver / radio operator, got rid of the machine gun, and put an ammo rack where he used to be. So no Firefly should have a machine gun in the bow. But in step 43, they're telling you to put the machine gun in. But in step 44 and 45, they show it with the appropriate blanking plate over top of the gun mount. So somebody wasn't paying attention for the final proof on the instructions here. So just make sure you get that part in place instead of the machine gun. Got some spare track links. Of course, upper hull to the lower hull. You may wish to box in the sponsons here because those are just going to be open. And we've got the little, usually piece of timber that a lot of crews would stick on the front here and load it up with ammo cans and jerry cans and sleeping bags and bedrolls and bicycles and pretty much anything they thought they would need. They're sticking on the front of the tank or on the back, which is nice to see because it's not easy to find a lot of stowage sets for 1/72 scale. Lots to choose from in 35th, but not much for 72, so it's nice that they included that. And even more stowage, more track links, spare wheels. I'll mount that onto the front. You might want to consult some pictures or some historical references, because every crew kind of went about it their own different way. Sometimes they'd just weld the wheels on, weld the tracks on. Other times they would have little fabricated brackets, so might want to investigate that a little further. And we got some more tracks going onto the side of the hull, although I don't think they would have them with the guide horns inwards. I would think these should probably be flipped around and welded on. Once again, consult some historical pictures there. You can find a lot of pictures of Fireflies and other Shermans in Normandy that look like just a pile of spare track links rolling down the road. But it is nice to include in there, plus gives you a little bit of leeway if you goof up some of your actual proper tracks. You get some spares, so to speak. And I'm pretty sure I've seen some pictures of Canadian Fireflies where this amount of tracks would not be nearly enough. You need Churchill tracks and Panther tracks and 3 different types of Sherman tracks. Fixing the inner mantlet to the turret. We got our 17-pounder gun barrel. Of course, keep in mind, don't careful with your gluing, so you can keep your gun somewhat posable, or just pick an attitude that you like and glue it in place. The outer mantlet, which is, so be careful where you glue it. Other half of the muzzle brake, which of course we're going to probably want to get rid of that seam line with 2 halves and probably try and glue that. And you can drill out those openings. Lower half of the turret. Commander's cupola. Unfortunately, it would have been nice if they could have given you an open turret with a commander figure. I mean, every Airfix kit comes with a pilot, so you'd think maybe they'd put a crew figure in their tanks. Pistol, originally a pistol port, but basically you just toss out spare shell casings from that little hatch. The British style radio antenna mount. Stick the hatch on, stick the turret on, and that's a complete Sherman Firefly. And our color schemes. 1 vehicle of the Northamptonshire Yeomanry, and of course in Normandy in 1944. Overall olive drab. Nice colorful vehicle number. And of course just the plain white markings. And slightly more colorful vehicle of the Staffordshire Yeomanry, involved in Operation Goodwood in Normandy in 1944. In the black and OD scheme, although it's sometimes depicted as having black disruptive camouflage, possibly field applied, but is unclear as to whether this may have been the result of weathering and/or areas that were repainted. Camouflage suggested is purely speculative and at the discretion of the modeler. So, a little bit of artistic license here. If you find a picture of this particular vehicle and you think that looks like it's a camouflage scheme, go for it. I would probably lean on just sticking with the plain olive drab and just, weathering it up, because it was a hot, dry, dusty summer in Normandy that year, so these things were covered with dust and dirt and stowage and baggage and everything else. Too bad that it's both just British vehicles. It'd be nice to see Canadian or Polish or New Zealand vehicles as well. But I'm sure somebody on the aftermarket will give us some additional decal sheets sometime down the road. But yeah, nice and simple. Any color you want as long as it's OD green. So, the new 1/72 scale Firefly from Airfix. the iconic British variant of the ubiquitous Allied tank of the Second World War. Nice looking kit. Be really good for a beginner, especially with those easy assembly tracks. You could get this thing started and finished probably well within a weekend. In addition, you got a nice easy paint scheme, any color you want as long as it's olive drab or some shade thereof. Will be interesting to see how this compares to the models kit, as I believe that's the only other currently available 72nd Firefly. So we might be persuaded to pick one of those up and do a little side-by-side comparison. But regardless, we will be doing a full build review of this one, so if you don't want to miss out on that, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you next time.